A lot of people say that Scarlet and Violet are the worst main series Pokemon games that we have ever gotten. And as someone who's been playing Pokemon for over 20 years, I had to find out for myself if they're really that bad. Starting off with the most divisive topic, the gameplay. With every new Pokemon generation, we get a bunch of changes to the formula, some of which are incredible and others are just...
Look, it's actual garbage!
With Scarlet and Violet, we finally got one of the biggest changes that fans have been begging for years, and that is the open world environment. Open worlds generally fall into one of two categories. Either they're full of incredible things to explore and uncover, or they are just terrible. And Pokemon had been slowly but surely moving this direction with games like Sword and Shield and Legends Arceus having their own wild areas, which are just diet open worlds, but with Scarlet and Violet, they were finally ripping the band-aid off and jumping into real open world environments.
Oh, this is terrible. Much better.
I love what they were going for with this, but the open world in Scarlet and Violet is about as much fun as getting the plague. When you're going from one town to the other, with an open world like this, you would think there would be hidden secrets to uncover and fun locations to find, but for the most part, it's just open fields full of nothing. You will see some items on the ground here and there, and some packs of Pokemon doing their thing, but for the most part, you're just walking from one town to the other with nothing happening in between. When I look at games like Breath of the Wild that came out a few years earlier, when you're exploring the world, there are random encounters that come up, like the Yiga clan, that make exploring fun and unique every time you do it because you never know what's going to happen next. But in Scarlet and Violet, the only thing that happens between towns and points of interest is that you will see Pokemon or items, and that is it. I have explored every nook and cranny of Scarlet and Violet, and though there are some parts that are really fun to explore, most of the game just looks like this. And it stinks because the trailers made it look like this world was going to be incredible to explore. And looking back at these trailers after playing the game, I feel like this had to have been a crime.
I think I need to call my lawyer. Hello?
A complaint I hear a lot about these games is that there is no level scaling whatsoever. Whether you're exploring the world or battling trainers and gyms, all Pokemon have a set level that is going to be consistent throughout the game and the post-game, and over time my opinion has shifted on this, and I honestly think the lack of level scaling for wild Pokemon is fine. If you go back to an earlier Pokemon game and you go to the earliest routes, all of the Pokemon are always going to be level 2 to 5, and if all Pokemon matched your party level or were scaled off the amount of badges you had, I feel like that would ruin the overall experience of exploring the world, especially in the early game where you run into Pokemon that are a lot stronger than the ones you currently have, and you get that brief moment where you reevaluate every choice you have ever made in your entire life. And even with the trainers in the overworld, I'm fine with the levels being set to a consistent level, because those battles are entirely optional for better or for worse. But the one part in this game where I think level scaling is absolutely necessary is the gyms. In Scarlet and Violet, the story is broken up into 3 parts, the main of which being the gym battles. And with Pokemon shifting into the open world, I thought this was going to be the first true Pokemon experience where you could go and battle any gym in any order you want. Because that would make sense, right? Welcome to this year's Big Dumb Idiot Convention. I'm your host, Midas. When I'm playing an open world game, I want to be able to explore it however I choose to do it. And though that is loosely possible in Scarlet and Violet, there is a predetermined order the game really wants you to go in. And during my first playthrough, I missed 2 gyms early on and went past them and did other things first. And when I came back to them, the gyms were incredibly easy and took almost no effort. So much so that I was disappointed that I didn't do them first, because they would have been much more fun had they been a challenge. And they could have made it so gyms scale to how many badges that you have at that current time, and it would have helped the issue at least a little bit if you were over leveled. But as it stands, it defeats the entire point of having an open world. And I'm fine if they want to keep Team Star and the Paradox Chase Pokemon at a set level, because those function more like a raid than anything else, and they're still fun to do even if you are over leveled. But even though there were changes that didn't work incredibly well, there were things that I really did like that were added in Scarlet and Violet. The first of which being the new gimmick, Terastalization. The gimmick era of Pokemon is an extremely divisive topic. Whether it's Mega Evolutions, Gigantamaxing, or Z-moves, everybody has their preferences, but I think that Terastalization is a unique idea that works really well. even if it looks incredibly dumb.
Guys, I got a new hat, can you tell?
Every Pokemon has an additional Terra type that is separate from their normal base typing. And when you have your Pokemon Terastalize in battle, not only does it get crunchy, it also becomes that type, replacing its weaknesses from its normal typing with the type it Terastalizes into, all while maintaining the stab bonuses that it would normally get from its types in addition to its new type. And though at first following it becomes a little complicated, it ends up being one of the most fun new mechanics that we have gotten in a Pokemon game. Not only do you have to know what type of Pokemon you're battling, you also have to anticipate what type they may be for a Terastalization. And both in the standard game and in competitive play, this is an incredible idea. Unlike Mega Evolutions, it affects every Pokemon in the game, regardless of evolution status or level, and unlike Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing, it doesn't completely throw off how the game works. It ends up feeling more like a subtle change to how the game works rather than a completely new mechanic you have to wrap your head around. And though at first I didn't love this mechanic, it has quickly become one of my favorite gimmicks that we have gotten in a Pokemon game. And there were some more subtle changes as well, like the ability to auto battle Pokemon, which I think saves a ton of time. From the beginning of the game, you can send your Pokemon out to go battle Pokemon or pick up items for you, which I think is a very nice touch. Any way to possibly make it easier to grind your Pokemon up is something that I'm always going to be a fan of, because I can knock through 10 or 15 auto battles in the same amount of time it would take me to complete one standard fight. I think the changes to the gameplay and mechanics are moving the right direction. I love the idea of an open world Pokemon game where I can go and explore however my heart desires. And though we're not there yet, I love to see the Pokemon Company making steps in that direction because I have wanted this for a very long time. So even though there are some things that I don't really love, I'm giving the changes to the gameplay and mechanics a 7 out of 10. In the most general sense, I don't really care how a game looks as long as the art direction is something that I enjoy. And normally I can get past a Pokemon game not having top of the line graphics. With Scarlet and Violet, it is almost impossible to defend the state that these games launched in. With having so many Pokemon on screen, having their own stats and abilities to keep track of, there is a lot going on to keep these games running at all. But at launch, and even to this day, Scarlet and Violet are an absolute mess. Granted, this could be fixed with the Switch 2 version of the game coming soon, but at the current state on an original Switch, even the OLED model, it does not work well. While playing this game, there were dozens of times, both in battle and while exploring the world, where I thought my Switch was going to explode. Specifically if I was near water or it was raining in-game, or God forbid, both, because the frame rate of the game would drop to a staggeringly low level. And it's not like the graphics are incredibly high detail either, it just looks like a standard Pokemon game. And I get this was the first Pokemon game to be a true open world experience, but whether it's the art style and the graphics themselves or the frame rate of the game, Scarlet and Violet do not play like a game that released in 2023. Like during one of the cutscenes, I had a Bisharp walk directly up a vertical wall, and though that is more so funny than anything else, it's just a shame that a Switch game is still in this state to this day. That's not to say it hasn't gotten better since launch. They have added updates to make the game feel a little bit more playable, but because there's times where the game struggles to run at all, I have to give it a 3 out of 10 on performance. I am by no means someone who believes the new Pokemon games are unable to make a good Pokemon. There are some Pokemon from every generation that I find great, and there are others that I don't really like. And overall, the new Pokemon in Paldea are pretty good. The starter Pokemon selection isn't my favorite, but I wouldn't say it's bad. Sprigatito and Fuecoco are really good Pokemon, but Quaxly isn't my cup of tea. I get what they were going for, and I love the water and fighting typing, but there are so many great water type Pokemon available in this game, and I can't think of a good reason to take Quaxly over any of the other water types that are available. And the regular Pokemon you find on the journey are pretty great as well. The new designs like Cloth, Scovillain, and Tinkaton are really good. And don't even get me started on the Paldean Wooper, which is one of my favorite regional forms we have ever gotten. And there are even some Pokemon that are not technically regional forms, but they're heavily inspired by Pokemon from earlier generations like Toedscool and Wiglet. But I have one major problem with Paldea, and that's that they did not include a regional bird.
Yes, hello, how do I order a guillotine? No, I don't know how to spell it.
From Pidgey in Generation 1 to Rookity in Generation 8, we have always had a regional bird, for better or for worse. And though there are bird Pokemon in Paldea, it's really disappointing that there wasn't an early route bird like in every other main series Pokemon game. But one of the things Paldea does the best is have a great balance between new Pokemon and returning favorites. Unlike some other generations that lack in Pokemon variety, Paldea has a ton of different Pokemon to choose from at any given point in the game. And considering I've beaten through this game a few times now, every time I do, my team looks entirely different with a blend of new and old Pokemon alike. But one of the biggest and most interesting changes that came with the Pokemon selection in Paldea is that you get your legendary Pokemon in the very beginning of the game. Depending on what version you pick, you get either Koraidon or Miraidon. They crash land on the beach really early on in the game, and when you get to them, they become your friend almost immediately. Though you can't use them in battle until much later in the game, they serve as a method of transportation throughout the entirety of your journey. And I think that was a brilliant idea that both makes traversal feel much better and more streamlined, while also building anticipation throughout the entire game for when you're finally able to use this Pokemon in battle. But the biggest and most controversial change to Pokemon came with the introduction of the new Paradox Pokemon. Scarlet and Violet do something very different than any other Pokemon game we've gotten, and this time they take the regional form to an entirely new level. Paradox Pokemon are either future or past versions of Pokemon that exist in the modern day. In Pokemon Scarlet, you get all of the past Paradox Pokemon, which in my opinion are all incredibly well designed. You can tell what these Pokemon are based off of just by looking at them, but they really do look like a prehistoric version of the Pokemon that we've come to know and love. And as much as I love the past versions of Paradox Pokemon, I really don't like the future versions. In Pokemon Violet, all of the Paradox Pokemon come from the future, which in my opinion is a great idea, except every single Pokemon design is just a robot.
The robots have taken over the Pokemon Center, not the Pokemon Center!
Truthfully, I don't think it was a bad idea to have Pokemon merge with technology for their Paradox forms, but there are ways they could have done this without turning every Pokemon into just a robot. With the past versions of Paradox Pokemon, you can tell how they went from that version back in the day to what they look like now. But to just turn every Pokemon into a robot because it's the future just seems like a cop-out design-wise. But with there being over 1,000 separate Pokemon now, I am still impressed that Paldea was able to create such good designs. So overall for Pokemon variety, I'm giving Scarlet and Violet a 7 out of 10. Starting with Generation 4, stories become one of the most important parts in a Pokemon game. We have gotten Pokemon stories that have permanently altered my brain chemistry because of how good they were. And after recently replaying it, I think Scarlet and Violet has one of the better stories in the Pokemon series. The story is broken up into 3 different sections. The first is the most common that you would see in any Pokemon game, being the 8 Gym Challenge. Before you get your starter Pokemon, you're introduced to your first rival, and that's Nemona. She's a champion ranked trainer who you'll run into time and time again on your Pokemon journey. And as far as the gym challenges go in Pokemon, this is okay. A lot of the gyms have a mini game before you can battle the gym leader, whether it's collecting a bunch of Sunflora or pushing around a giant olive. The minigames serve as a test, and I think it's a really cool idea that breaks up the monotony that we've come to know from Pokemon gyms. It's not the first game to have minigames before a gym, and honestly I hope it's not the last. And beyond the order of operations I talked about earlier, the only real issue I have with the gym challenge portion of the game is that I don't love the idea of a champion rank. A Pokemon champion is supposed to be the best of the best, being the strongest trainer you could possibly be in the region. And your rival Nemona is already a champion ranked trainer when you start the game. In every other Pokemon game, there was just one champion, and that person was the best Pokemon trainer in the region. And we do have that with Geeta, who's referred to as the top champion in the region. But having champion be a title that you earn by defeating the Elite Four defeats the entire purpose of becoming a champion in the first place. Historically, when you fight the Elite Four, it feels like you're taking on the strongest trainers in the region. There was a feeling of tension and suspense that you no longer get because the Elite Four in Paldea are just giving you an examination. That being said, I do find it interesting that they allow Larry to be both a gym leader and an Elite Four member at the same time, as long as he's using 2 different types of Pokemon for his gym and for his Elite Four assessment. And the best part about it is that he's using normal type for his gym and flying type for his Elite Four team, paying respect to the egregious amount of normal and flying types that we've gotten throughout the years. Overall, the Gym Challenge and the Elite Four are pretty good. I wouldn't say they're the best in the series, but they are also far from the worst. The second part of the story involves our villain organization, Team Star. And I don't think they're the worst villain organization that we've gotten, but they're also not very good either. One of the major plot points of Scarlet and Violet is that everything that happens under the supervision of the school. And what's somewhat interesting is that Team Star is a segment of the school. The entire team is made up of students who have been bullied by others throughout their time at school, and this was their form of getting revenge for what they'd gone through. I feel like everybody has been bullied at least once, so you can sympathize with them at least a little bit. But my main problem with Team Star is not their ambitions or how they're doing things, it's that they feel underdeveloped as a whole. I am fine if the Pokemon Company doesn't want to go the direction of world-ending cataclysms like they did in the past, in favor of telling a story that people can relate to more, but if they're going to do that, they have to make the story good, and the entirety of Team Star's actions has little to no impact on the story whatsoever. I do like how Team Star is really the only part of the game that ties into the overall school narrative the story has, but every Team Star base is exactly the same, where you beat a bunch of Pokemon in an auto battle, and then fight the leader and a giant Reverum. I think Team Star would have been a lot better had there been an actual reason to want to take them down, but as they are, they're just kind of decent. But the saving grace of the story from Scarlet and Violet comes from the last character, and that is Arven. Arven's journey to save his Mabostiff is one of my favorite that we have gotten in a main series Pokemon game in a long time. Arven's goal is to collect all of the Herba Mystica, magical plants that will help bring his Pokemon back to full health. And going on this journey with Arven to save his best friend was genuinely fun. Watching Arven go from the character that you meet in the beginning of the game who doesn't want anything to do with anyone else because of his trust issues, to a genuine friend was great to see. You and Arven go around chasing down Titan Pokemon, where you then battle them and take the herbs they have eaten. Though it's not the most complicated, unlike the Team Star missions, there is variety on what the Pokemon you're going to be battling are, which is a nice touch. And at the end of all of these missions, you have a sandwich with Arven, which is then eaten by your legendary Pokemon, which unlocks some new form of traversal to get around the region. This was a highlight for me because when I did these, I felt like I was getting an actual reward. Where with the gyms and the Team Star missions, you don't really get anything in return. But where the story of the game really gets good is once you've completed all of the main missions, you then unlock Area 0. And though this is technically a post-game, it also serves as the overall climax of the story, and it seems like they were saving all of their writing skills for the very end of the game.
Midas, how you liking the game so far? It's fine so far. That's good, but trust me, it gets really good around the 100-hour mark. 100? Are you sure that's not just Stockholm Syndrome?
Throughout the game, you hear rumors about Area 0, it's at the center of the map, so you really can't miss it. And throughout the game, you're told that Arven's parent, Professor Sada, or Professor Turo, are studying the phenomena of this special area, and your goal is to find them and figure out what is going on with this weird area. And going through Area 0 is an absolute blast, and as soon as you get to the final checkpoint, you run into the professor. Well, sort of. This is a spoiler warning for the end of Scarlet and Violet. If you don't want to be spoiled, you can skip to the time on screen. You have been warned. You find out that Professor Sada or Professor Turo are not actually alive, and they have been replaced by an AI model that has taken their place. This is obviously jarring for Arven and the rest of the crew because you have been communicating with this AI robot that you thought was a human throughout the entirety of the game. This is a philosophical nightmare because yes, this does look and act just like Arven's parent, but it is clearly an AI that is meant to protect the time machine that is at the center of Area 0. This leads to an incredibly climactic battle with the AI, and when you win, the AI sacrifices itself to destroy the time machine that had been plaguing Area 0 this entire time. Watching Arven come to the realization that this wasn't his parent after all, and it was just an AI that had taken his parent's place, is devastating to see, because he wanted to build a better relationship with his family, but considering this parent has been dead the entire time and never even thought to say goodbye, you watch all of Arven's hopes and dreams crumble at his feet. And though it took a while to get going, this was a great way to end the game. I think separating the game into 3 distinct sections was a really good idea. It broke up the game so nothing felt monotonous while everything could still feel interconnected. Although there are some sections that are better than others, I think the overall story in Scarlet and Violet was pretty good. So like some of the other sections, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Now that we have the ability to update video games online, it seems like we're never going to get a new deluxe version of a Pokemon game, for better or for worse. I'm usually a fan of the deluxe versions over the original, but if I can get all of the quality of life changes that come with that in a free update, I will take that. That being said, I'm fine with them replacing a deluxe version with DLC, as long as the DLC is good.
This game makes me want to start drinking. Much better.
The DLC in this game is fine. It offers 2 brand new areas to explore, which are decently sized and full of good Pokemon, but it made one crucial flaw that I don't really love, and that's telling one linear story throughout 2 DLCs. You meet a load of new characters, but the most important 2 are Carmen and Kieran, who are both going on their very own Pokemon journeys, and though their stories are pretty good overall, and the second DLC is far better than the first, they're missing one crucial element that would have made the game so much better that they had in Sword and Shield, and that's a fun, replayable mode like Dynamax Adventure. In the Crown Tundra DLC in Sword and Shield, we got Dynamax Adventures, which is something that I still play to this day when I want to shiny hunt a legendary. It's something that I can go back to time and time again and have a good time anytime I want to play the game, but in Scarlet and Violet, there is no similar game mode to justify the purchase. And though the stories they tell in the DLC are pretty good, if it had that one final piece, it would have made the entire package feel more complete. But overall, I think the DLC in Scarlet and Violet is fine. If you like the game, you'll like the DLC as well, so I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. And overall, I can understand the sentiment about why people think Scarlet and Violet are not good games, but I don't think they're the worst Pokemon games we've gotten. They are full of performance issues that could have been hammered out if they were given another 6 months to a year of development time, but to release these games in the state they were when everybody was expecting a great new open world Pokemon game was just sad to see. And though I think these games could have done a lot better, I don't think they're as bad as people say.
Pokemon is in a weird spot. They are dangerously close to running out of colors to name their games after. Well, what do you think the next games are going to be called? I feel like it's going to be something like Pokemon Lemon and Lime.